Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. My name is Reverend Jennifer Innis, and it is my great joy to serve as the minister of this congregation, along with members and friends, children and youth from all ages and all stages of life. I want to welcome you to our worship for Easter Sunday. In Unitarian Universalism, we draw on a wide range of sources in theology, philosophy, science, nature, along with our own human experience of the world. For this Easter, we focus on the Christian tradition as we explore existential questions around life, death, and what it means to leave something behind for the sake of what could be. For this year, we're exploring themes from the Resources in Soul Matters, a Unitarian Universalist source of worship information, small group programs, and children and youth resources. With Easter, we begin to explore the theme of becoming for this month. And also for this month, I want to thank Jill Thomas for decorating our pulpit. As part of our practice, we honor those who have gone before. These lands in this area were the home of the Peoria people, and they, in their time, made their communities in this place. Every congregation in our tradition is sustained by the care, skills, and financial gifts of our members and friends. If you would like to make a donation, see the link in the chat now or in the slide at the end of the service. And while we gather online, we also always welcome new visitors and guests. Please help us get to know you. You're welcome to join in our coffee hour after worship on Sunday, and see the separate Zoom link in our closing slides to have access to it. All are welcome to the conversation. And contact us through the church website as the best way for you to keep in touch. I have one additional credit for today's service. The reading is from the book of Mark in the Christian Scriptures. And this reading was created by Unitarian Universalist young adult CECILIA Campbell and shared with us by her mother, the Reverend Madeline Campbell. And now, as we enter into worship, we have one special announcement from Jean BOURKE.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jean BOURKE, and I'm a member of the annual campaign team. We want to extend an invitation to everyone to come next Sunday to our special Picnic in the Parking Lot. The purpose of this is really simple. We miss you. We want to see what real live UUs look like in person. So bring your lawn chairs, bring a picnic lunch, and of course, bring your mask. Social distancing is the rule of the day. Amanda Franklin will be hosting an open mic, so if you wish to sing a song, play your favorite instrument, regale us with a story, or do a little stand-up, now's your chance. And leave the checkbooks at home. Well, no heavy pledge pitches this time. We've got plenty of time for that later on. Right now, getting reacquainted is at the top of our list. And if the weather is as beautiful as it is today, this will be a great time for a long overdue in-person event. And if your kids are asking what an in-person event is, tell them it's like a Zoom meeting without the computer. It all begins next Sunday at 12:30 p.m., so please join us. It's time to start building a new day. Thank you.
Once again the From the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Roll away the stone of your hesitant heart. Let the light shine on all the sleeping shadows. Awaken to this day that offers itself to you and to all as a gift. Awaken to this beauty that persists, this chalice that we might begin again, that even here we are finding our way to healing and hope, that even now we are changed by the in and out of breath. The rhythm we forge across screens and comments sections, the recreation of community and remembering of how to grieve together, woven through loving, that we might still surprise the earth with a new song, sung together, calling us all in, and before long, sending us back out to life. Come, let us worship together.
The Reverend Sherry Woodbury. As we light our chalices, let us remember that our separate fires kindle the flame of faith and community that lights us all. Like this flame, the dawn of Easter is harbinger of new life and new joy. In its light, sorrow, regret, danger, and fear give way to the open space of new beginnings and the glow of rekindled community. For just as the golden crocus breaks through the warming winter earth and the songs of migrant birds signal the coming of spring, so may we hear the call of the future winging its way to us on warm winds. May we witness in this flickering flame the good news that love rises again.
Good morning. The story I want to tell you on this Easter morning is only part of the story of Jesus, a beloved teacher of many. Although he lived long ago, his lessons of love and kindness still bring hope and joy to people all over the world. Jesus taught his followers to look for ways to live together in harmony, to learn to forgive, to settle arguments in a peaceful way. As he went from village to village, Jesus reached out to help sick people get well and to feed those who were hungry. He treated everyone with the same kindness, women and men, Jews and non-Jews, rich and poor, good and bad. Jesus gained many followers, and not everyone was happy about that. Some people worried that the crowd might get out of hand and disturb the peace. This would get the leaders in trouble, since they were in charge of keeping the peace in their city. Once the closest followers of Jesus, called his disciples, knew that the leaders disapproved of Jesus, they were worried. When they gathered for the Jewish holiday Passover meal that year, Jesus asked them to remember him in his lessons, no matter what. Today, that meal is known as the Last Supper. After the Last Supper, things happened quickly. Soldiers arrested Jesus, saying he was stirring up trouble. In those days, the worst criminals were punished by being nailed to a wooden cross and left to die. Jesus was punished in this terrible way. As Jesus suffered on the cross, his mother Mary and his friends gathered at his side. They knew Jesus had done nothing wrong, and they were filled with sadness. After Jesus died, his followers carried on his teaching and honored his memory. Jesus' message of love and kindness spread throughout the world. Years later, people who learned from his followers wrote down what they wanted people to know about Jesus' life and lessons, and the best known of these stories became part of the Christian holy book, the Bible. Some people said that Jesus was the Son of God, and started the Christian religion with that belief. Some people said that after Jesus died, God resurrected him or brought him back to life. They celebrate that resurrection each Easter Sunday. Many Unitarian Universalists say that Jesus was a wise and beloved teacher, whether he was the Son of God or not. Some said that it is important to remember him because he taught us to treat people with love and to stand up for justice and peace. They believe that now, 2,000 years later, we can still learn from the life and lessons of Jesus. We can celebrate the life of Jesus any day, not just Easter Day. We can try to live as he did, with full hearts, loving words, and kind actions. So be it, and happy Easter.
We sing out together our songs of thanksgiving, rejoicing in goods which the ages have wrought. For life that enfolds us and helps and heals and holds us and leads beyond the goals which our forebears once sought. We sing of the freedoms which martyrs and heroes have won by their labor, their sorrow, their pain. The oppressed befriending, our ampler hopes defending, their death becomes a triumph, they died not in vain. We sing of the prophets, the teachers, the dreamers, designers, creators, and workers and seers, our own lives expanding, our gratitude commanding. Their deeds have made immortal their days and their years. We sing of community now in the making, in every far continent, region, and land, with those of all races, all times and names and places. We pledge ourselves in covenant firmly to stand.
From George Odell. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted, when we are in trouble and afraid, when we despair, when we are in temptation and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. We need one another in the hour of our successes, when we look for someone with whom to share our triumphs, and in the hour of defeat, when we need the encouragement to endure and rise again. All our lives, we are in need, and others are in need of us. For our joys and sorrows today, I start with joy. There are so many joys in our hearts, around us, and among us. There are new babies in some of our lives. There's been a chance to see beloved friends. Some of us have been accepted to schools and new programs and looking forward to the coming year. And we are blessed with the simple wonder of the renewal of the world in the presence of spring. May we cherish the abundance of hope and joy among us. And now I turn to sorrow. We hold in our hearts all that is within us, all of the losses, all of the grief, anger, frustration, regret, depression. People have died. Our hearts have been broken. Something, somewhere has been lost and will not come again. So much sorrow is with us, and so much is unspoken. In our larger world, there are two deep sorrows. Every so often, Easter falls on April 4th. This day is to be noted in our contemporary history, for this is the day that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. This is the day made everlasting by the photo of the men on the balcony at the hotel in Memphis where Dr. King was murdered, and how they pointed back from the balcony to the source of the shot. This was the death of another, like we are honoring in Easter, the death of another who spoke the truth in the face of power. Let us this day remember Reverend King. And our immediate present also is a sorrow. For this week started the trial of the key officer in the murder of George Floyd, the Black gentleman who was suffocated while being held by police a little more than a year ago. We offer prayers for the witnesses telling their stories this week. There are the young and the older, the bystanders, the professionals. All are reliving the trauma of watching a man be put to death. We offer prayers for the witnesses, for all that they have seen, and for telling that story again. We offer our prayers for the prosecutors, prayers for the jury, and prayers for the judge. We offer our prayers for George Floyd's family, for the people who knew him, who loved him and still love him, and who relive his death again and again, and not only in the news. We offer our prayers for the city, for all who are involved in this trial. And let us offer our prayers for ourselves, that we may move and act and be in fact different than who we were, because of learning of this terrible death and the impact of the aftermath and the impact of the process of possibly bringing some justice. Let us take one more moment in quiet, for indeed there is abundance and there is much weight in the world. Let us be present to this moment, this present moment, and follow our breath. I invite you to breathe with me now. Amen. I offer a second reflection, a prayer for today as we mark the end of Passover in the Jewish tradition. And this reflection is adapted from the Reverend Elizabeth Mount. And I have a note about language that the word dayenu, which is used in this prayer, is often translated from Hebrew as "it would have been enough" or "it would be sufficient." In ancient times, they said, dayenu. It would have been enough to be spared after the plagues. It would have been enough to have been freed of slavery. It would have been enough to have had food in the desert. And now we question, will it be enough again? Dayenu. Last year, our questions were, will it be enough to stay at home? Will it be enough if we are deemed essential and we are made to work? Will it be enough to wear a mask when we go to the grocery store, to the office, and to the gas station? Will it be enough to keep us well in the midst of a plague that has not passed over? Dayenu. Still, we wonder how to work, how to gather again, and now how to take care of the most vulnerable. Will it be enough to commit ourselves and fulfill the promises to be different, those promises made in the past year? Will it be enough to let ourselves more than survive, but be more because of what we have known and learned? Dayenu. It would have been enough, and it will be enough again. If the story of Passover is told and teaches us how to live in this time, it will be enough. If the stories of our ancestors bringing us hope for tomorrow, it will be enough. If we join together in remembering that we all come from people who have survived again and again, it will be enough this year, as it is each and every year. Dayenu. It will be enough that we are together today.
Silence, my soul. These trees of I ask the tell me about Silence my soul.
When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so they could go and anoint Jesus' dead body. Very early in the morning, on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they came to the tomb. They were saying to each other, "Who is going to roll the stone away from the entrance for us?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, and it was a very large stone. Going into the tomb, they saw a young man in a white robe seated on the right side, and they were startled. He said to them, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He has been raised. Look, here is the place where they laid him. Go, tell his disciples, especially Peter, that he is going into Galilee ahead of you. You will see him there, just as he told you." Overcome with terror and dread, they fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid.
Ready or not, Easter is here. Every year, Easter comes for those of us who follow the teachings of Jesus, who have read and sung and reflected and prayed. Easter comes for us who have studied and researched and wondered about history and context. Easter is here. This Christian message permeates our social language and our context. And every year, we return to this mystery of the teacher who was tortured and executed and whose rebirth defied the natural order of life and death. Easter is here, ready or not, and we would never be the same again. I take that to heart as I prepare for Easter in a way that is so different than for Christmas. I'm going to say there's moments when Christmas is a relatively easy venture, wonderful music, celebrating the new birth, and on and on. With Easter, so many theologies and expectations show up amongst the Unitarian Universalists. It's not merely the difference between scripture or not scripture, traditional music or non-traditional music. There are so many theologies and existential questions among us. And in my experience as a minister, Easter is deeply complex. It is its own parable that will never be fully known because it never can be fully known. I have to rediscover Easter every time in order to fulfill my commitment to you as a minister. I invite us for this year to let Easter be personal. Easter is relived as the struggle of one teacher who offers this message of radical love. As a community has been formed that is inspired by that message and the pain and loss that comes when those in power find that message too dangerous to be allowed to live. For this moment, we bring the added grief of making our way and making meaning through the second Easter of the pandemic. We are practicing, still, we practice separation as an act of love. We watch leaders who have been torn between conflicting motivations around public health and financial interest. And we have gone through the denial that this really is that bad, even when so many still die every day, when hundreds of thousands of people have been lost. We are still observing, seeing the true impact of the economic and the racial disparities showing up from who was getting sick and still gets sick and who has the highest rates of death, and now who is getting the vaccine. And here is Easter, in the midst of everything, without regard to the rest of the world. Last year, Easter was just way too soon to make sense of everything or of anything, frankly. But this year, this year, some of us are on this verge of bursting forth, unable to hold back after receiving the gift of the vaccine. Even while so many of us remain careful and concerned and protective of ourselves and of our children. And as we watch the numbers of infections and rise again, this Easter, this second celebration of the renewal of the triumph of life over death, is far more complicated than the previous. The world will not be what it once was. I know there's this push towards normalcy, whatever that might mean. But we are not the same as who we were a year ago or the year before that. And the question is how to respond. How shall we be different, even as we are on this forming edge of being able to gather in person again? Easter is, we are not meant to leave the same as when we entered it. My colleague, Reverend Kendall Gibbons, reminds me that the essence of Easter is transformation. The essence of Easter is transformation. The flowers and the insects and the creatures that emerge this spring are not the same as last year or the year before, and neither are we. Those expressions of life, those particular embodiments are of the past. For Jesus' followers, the death of their teacher was an end. The death of their teacher was this profound end, as abundant as his message was. But also what was an end was this empty tomb. What was discovered when the women went to go dress him on that morning. The usual course of things is finished. And the response of the community can be to save ourselves. The usual course is at an end. This Easter comes in a moment unlike any in our lifetime. We have a chance to discover what comes next. And I'll say, it is entirely fine to begin and to remember that there still remains so much grief and sorrow and devastation. And that's perfectly fine to start there. That the denial of that, for the sake of the eagerness of reunion, to let unfinished business remain unfinished, will be in part informing how we shape this world to come. Let me say a little bit more about Jesus' death and that as a loss. Now, his terrible death on the cross was likely from suffocation as much as anything related to the battering of his body. His followers would know this. The people were familiar with how the body stopped being able to breathe in the position that it was in on the cross. That small mercy of being allowed to bury him eased only slightly the heartbreak that they could not properly do so, properly care and dress his body because the Sabbath was starting. They could not finish this business. They had to leave him alone behind that stone that covered the entrance to the tomb. And when the women returned so early on that first morning that they could, after the Sabbath was done, they didn't know how they were going to get to him. You know, their question, who will roll away the stone for us? So that was one form of their fear. But then that changed again when they came to the tomb and had found it open, had found the stone was in fact rolled away. So their questions became an entirely different direction of, would the body be there? Would it have been mistreated? Would it have been secretly disposed of by the authorities? Would the grief be further compounded by not being able to take care of this precious person themselves? There had been this beautiful message of a new world, of God's love for them, of welcoming the stranger and the neighbor, of turning the tables on the world and naming what mattered most. Did that message disappear when Jesus breathed his last? Would this new day become only betrayal and suffering and death? So what do the women find? They find a fear of a different kind. They are bewildered. But then there is this messenger who confirms what had been, at least, that Jesus had been there. And then this messenger goes on to answer an entirely different direction, to say, he is risen, that Jesus is risen. And so the women are turned yet again into, what if this message is not gone? What if this message somehow lives? There is this messenger in such a matter-of-fact way confirming that something endures on the other side of oblivion. So what about us? What about this Easter morning in a world that still holds a pandemic and illness and death, and still holds the economic and the heartbreak and the grief of the impact from it? What about us? How might we rise again to make a new world? What is the next part of the path that is not the same path that we would have been on? The world has fallen apart before. It certainly has, in smaller ways, in lots of different ways throughout history. But this one is so much more acute because of the speed of the transmission of the disease and the impact. Perhaps what helps us in this going forth is that the first lesson to remember that we learned a while ago and keep relearning again and again. The first lesson is there truly is no separation, no effective physical walls that keep one set of humans apart from another. Not really. That illusion keeps being shattered again and again when it comes to the human condition. We are separated physically, probably, often, and yet we remain touched by each other. We remain connected. What also is true is the depth of love and compassion and our willingness to help and serve. So much has shown up in this last year, in these last several years, for so many reasons. It is creative and imaginative, but also simply a willingness. Simply, we are moved by all that is around us to do something. And the forces of empire, whether Roman or otherwise, old or new, do not understand this connection, this value of human life, that each of us matters, truly. The forces of empire do not understand this, that we are called to each other. Our response is how we share, how we work together to build a common good, how to renew the world in the image of which we dream. This is a new opportunity to live as if we are in this together, because in fact we are. Our Universalist forebears reminds us of this long ago in saying that the love that is proclaimed by Jesus in the scriptures, this transformation is at the core of the Easter message. This renewal and rising at Easter doesn't happen because one God with a little g favors one or a few people. This abundance is open to us all. We get to offer our co-creative response to this gift. Yes, we name the loss. We have lost beloved friends and family and elders. And further, our hearts break because of the lives that didn't get tended to in the course of the pandemic, as well as how oppression leads to the pre-existing conditions of so many of our bodies that further weakened us and made us more susceptible to illness and to death. We get a chance to remember all of these things as being present with us, and then make a choice. Easter begins with tears. Let that be the case. It is okay to feel sad and lost in this moment, to lament and mourn and rail against the awfulness. And at Easter, as the stone has been rolled away, as the messenger said, there is still life. Somewhere there is a source that says, rise. Rise again. The exact meaning may not be clear, and not for a long time, but new life. New life is possible. From the last verse of the hymn, Amazing Grace, to the tune of House of the Rising Sun. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. Whether we've been here for a year or 10 years or will be for 10,000 years, it still rings true. We have no less of an opportunity, no less heart, no less possibility to do this rebuilding and create our co-creation with each other and with the world, to reconnect, to renew. Remember what we have left behind. Honor all that is within us and around us in all the complexity of life. And to ask ourselves, and I look forward to this answer, what will we do to fulfill the gift of life, to honor the grace of existing in this time and in this age? We get to rebuild our faith, reconstitute it in a human response to a shattered world. Easter is here, and the rest is up to us. Amen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For those who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, may this day be an affirmation of divine love and promises. For those who see the eternal story of new spring and life beginning anew, may you breathe deeply of a season of promise and hope. For those who are experiencing despair or hopelessness this Easter, may you find a doorway to the warmth and care that offers you liberation. For all of us, together we can do what no single person can do. Rolling aside the stone reminds us we are far more powerful than we ever could be on our own. Our offering of strength to help is a prayer made real. Let us begin again in hope and in love. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.